What's the number one killer of firefighters? Well, according to the NFPA, 54% of firefighter deaths were due to overexertion, stress, and other medical reasons. And of those, the overwhelming majority were due to sudden cardiac death. Now, that's obviously a problem and likely not a secret to you if you've been working in the fire service for some time. I recently came across the Healthy Heroes study, which I believe was in October of 2022. It was published in Cell Metabolism. And essentially, what they found was that time-restricted eating was not only feasible, but positive for a lot of firefighters. Now, what I'll do is I'll put a link to the entire study down below, because unlike Tony Fauci, I do not represent science.
Because I represent science.
So I will let you read it in its entirety, but I did want to give you some of the highlights. Number 1. A 10-hour time-restricted eating regimen is feasible for shift workers on a 24-hour schedule. Now, this is important for a couple reasons. Number 1, a lot of people will say that time-restricted eating, also called intermittent fasting, is bad for firefighters because we need constant fuel. This flies in the face of that. This is also important because this doesn't just apply to firefighters. Nurses, doctors, police officers, and a whole bunch of other people also are considered shift workers who will either have to work through the night or on a 24-hour schedule. So theoretically, this should apply to not just firefighters, but really anybody who's a constant shift worker. Number 2, time-restricted eating improved VLDL, or very low density lipoprotein size, and quality of life measures. This is important again because there are so many detractors of the idea of intermittent fasting because we've been told for so long that you should be eating constantly throughout the day. Everybody's heard the old adage that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and that may not actually be the case. Now, of course, everyone is going to be a little bit different. Some people are going to respond better than others, but generally speaking, most of the people, including myself, who have tried time-restricted eating have had many benefits. Number 3, time-restricted eating decreased HbA1c, commonly known as just A1c, and blood pressure for those with cardiometabolic risk. Now, this is important because if you're unfamiliar with what A1C is it's essentially just the average of your blood glucose over the past 90 days. This, along with blood pressure and many other metrics, are important for you to track because if they're out of balance, it could be indicative of some serious metabolic issues that you currently have or will have soon in the future. Number 4, a consistent 10-hour eating window had no adverse effects. First of all, most of us aren't expending nearly enough energy to justify constantly eating, especially with all the sugars and carbohydrates that we are provided with throughout the day. But it's also important because if you eat within those 10 hours and you sleep, or at least are in bed for about 8 hours, that only leaves 4 hours out of the day where you do not eat.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
That's a pretty low barrier that shouldn't be that difficult to achieve, whether you move your breakfast time up 2 hours or your dinner time down 2 hours, or just cut out early morning or late evening snacks. So all this information is fine and good, but what does it mean for you and how should you implement it? Well, the first thing you should likely do is go get a physical and have a comprehensive set of labs drawn. This includes things like your cholesterol, your A1C, your vitals, and much more. If you decide to try time-restricted eating, it's good that you have a baseline so that later on down the road, you can measure and see if your basic metrics are improving, getting worse, or just staying the same. Next, start small and don't eat trash. By start small, I mean if you've never done this before, don't go from eating how you normally do to all the way down to a 1 or 2 hour time-restricted eating window. If you do that, there's a chance you will get frustrated, you will get hungry, and you will binge eat.
I told you, when I'm finished, you can have what's left.
That kind of throws all the results out the window, so you don't want to do that. But it's also important to note that if you are going to be doing time-restricted eating, that is not licensed to eat garbage and anything else that you want. Now, I'm not going to get into the debate of what you should or shouldn't be eating, but what I will say is you should generally aim towards whole foods. In other words, the less processed, the better. Next, listen to your body. As you're going through and doing this and you're feeling incredibly tired or lethargic or just generally not good, change something up, try something different. I know for myself and many other people, eating certain types of food or maybe even eating at certain times of the day can make you more tired, more irritable, or just generally not feel good. So make sure as you're doing this, you're paying very close attention to how you're feeling, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally. And finally, make small changes and get rechecked. After about 3 or 4 months, go back to your doctor and have that set of labs redrawn. See if you've been improving, getting worse, or essentially staying the same. Small changes over time can lead up to big differences. So start where you are, start small, and see where you go. But if you want to know about one of the worst things we tell young firefighters, you should watch this video right here.